Work in progress. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio speaking there about this potential deal or peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia brokered by the Americans. For more, that's bringing Leslie Shedd, Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center non-resident fellow and founder of national security communications firm Rising Communications. She was previously a senior advisor to members of the U.S. Congress, U.S. senatorial and presidential candidates. Leslie, always good to see you. First off, talk to us about your sense of the key power players in this deal, because it does look like J.D. Vance did play a very strong part in this. How might this inform the shape, the contours of this 28-point peace plan?
I think that multiple members of the Trump administration have participated in this. I also think it's important to keep in mind that while it might feel like this is something that came out of, negotiations over the last couple of weeks, the president and his team have been meeting with the Russians, they have been meeting with Europeans, they have been meeting with Ukrainians. So they have been doing this for months and months and months. What this document is a result of all of those meetings, and it has been because of meetings that have happened, again, with Secretary Rubio, absolutely with Witkoff, certainly. Dan Driscoll appears to have been a part of it. So I think that you are seeing a lot of key figures in Trump's cabinet that are national security experts all meeting together to try to figure out how to find peace.
Do you think there is agreement among U.S. officials at this stage in terms of what peace should look like between what Vance has in mind and what Marco Rubio has in mind?
I think that the most important thing is everybody agrees that they want peace. Every single person in the Trump administration absolutely wants to find a peace deal. They all understand that that is going to have to include some type of concessions. What do those concessions look like? I'm certain that each one of them bring different thoughts and opinions to the table, but at the end of the day, whatever a final deal looks like, which hopefully we will get to one, it is going to include a lot of their thoughts, the President of the United States thoughts, as well as input from our European allies and from Ukraine.
What should the final plan look like in your mind? And does this require Ukraine to perhaps make some concessions when it comes to land?
So I think most importantly, what President Trump wants, what everybody wants, is not just a peace deal here, but a lasting peace. And the only way to ensure that is if there are security guarantees backed up by both the United States and Europe and enforcement mechanisms for those security agreements. The Budapest Agreement didn't work because all it was reassurances. It was never any type of guarantee. So in 2014, when Russia came and invaded Crimea, President Obama didn't want to help Ukraine. He didn't have to help Ukraine. So I think those are key. I would also take this a step further and say it is really, really the best thing to do here would be for the president to submit these security agreements as a treaty to the United States Senate and have them ratify it, or at the very least have Congress codify it. This is important for two reasons. Number one, it will ensure that these security agreements will be enforced no matter who is in office, who sits in the White House over the next 10 years. And number two, it sends a very powerful and important message to Putin and to our allies all over the world that the United States stands firmly in support of this, Republicans and Democrats, executive branch and legislative branch.
Leslie, you were alluding to some of this earlier, though. In terms of the European officials gathering, they might be scrambling now to come up with a counter proposal. But given how they seem to have been locked out of what's been agreed between the U.S. and the Russians, or discussed at least, to what extent can this be lasting?
So I don't think it's fair to say that. Again, when you're talking about negotiations of this size and this magnitude, it's not something that's come together over the last 2 days or 2 weeks. This has been because of input from European Union leaders, from Ukraine, from Russia, from all different parties. The president and his team have been taking these meetings for months and months and months. So I do think that Europeans are absolutely sitting down. Ukrainians are doing the same thing in Geneva right now. There's reports reporting out that says Ukraine has proposed some changes to this plan. President Trump is a deal maker. He's a master deal maker. He understands that we've got to have something, put pen to paper, get something in writing so that we can sit down and hash out what is and is not acceptable.
What do you think the Europeans should be including in a counter proposal then?
That'll be up to the Europeans. Like I said, to me, the most important part is making sure that these security agreements are in place and that they have a very strong enforcement mechanism. We've got to make sure that is what is going to deter Putin from trying to do this again. I would say, too, and going back to one of your earlier questions, I know there's a lot of frustration about the idea that Ukraine is going to have to concede land. I don't like that. I don't think anybody that supports Ukraine likes that. I don't think it's fair. That being said, President Trump believes, and I agree with him, that because President Biden refused to get the weapons into Ukraine when they needed them at the beginning of the war, when they had the ability to fully repel these Russian troops, because he did not do that, it allowed Russian troops to entrench themselves, and it has created this stalemate. And as much as I don't want to see a single inch of Ukrainian land given to Russia, in order to get to a peace plan so that we can stop the slaughter that is happening, the only way to do that is going to be through a negotiated settlement.
Leslie, can you talk to us about why we've been seeing, to your point about this in the background having come after perhaps weeks of negotiations that is involving all the parties, why the timing and the manner in which this potential peace plan is being announced? What do you think is going on in the background here?
So one thing for timing that's important to keep in mind is that winter is coming. Winter is here in Ukraine, and it is going to be a very cold, very hard winter for the people of Ukraine as Putin continues to target their energy infrastructure. I think the president knows this in the back of his mind, understands that there is a real risk here to, a humanitarian crisis in Ukraine over heat, and trying to make sure that we can bring this to an end as quickly as possible. So I am certain that that is absolutely in the back of his mind. I know there's been a lot of attention paid to this deadline, right, that the president has set. But again, President Trump is a master deal maker. He knows when you're in negotiations, you got to set deadlines with people. Otherwise, they'll just drag their feet forever. He's already come out and said very clearly that this is kind of his introductory plan. There's flexibility. Secretary Rubio has said the same thing, too. So I think that the timing and the pressure right now is to try to make sure these negotiations are continuing to move forward. I think he felt that they stalled out, especially after the big success of the Alaska summit, and he wants to try to get this rolling again.
Leslie, I wonder also if you could shed some light on how the American public might be viewing all this. We've just come through early November elections where a key issue, of course, is domestically what we're seeing in the cost of living. The Democrats, there was a clean sweep pretty much. How does the domestic backdrop perhaps play into what we're seeing on the global stage in this really high stakes confrontation between Ukraine and Russia?
So poll after poll has showed that Americans will continue to support Ukraine. Even a majority of Republicans continue to support Ukraine. So I don't think that this is any kind of a negative thing against the president. I think overall Americans are war weary. I think that they want to find an end to this. I don't think many of them very much like Russia, and certainly don't want anything that appears as though Russia is a victor. But we've all seen the images and the videos of, dead Ukrainians, children being targeted, women being targeted. We've got to figure out a way that we can end this war and save lives.
Among the confrontations, I think slight concern as well is whether the Trump administration is taking a more aggressive posture in the Caribbean. It's not just about brokering these peace deals between Ukraine and Russia or even in the Middle East. What is your assessment of what we should be paying attention to in terms of the Trump administration's position there?
So first, I think in general, the president is working to reestablish America as a global dominant force, right? We are making America strong again. And I will tell you that when America is strong and America is involved, it makes a stronger and safer world as a whole. So that is great. The things that are happening in the Caribbean with regards to Venezuela, it's important to know that every president since Maduro has taken power, Republican and Democrat alike, have all said that Maduro's regime poses a threat to the United States of America and that he is an illegitimate leader. President Trump's just the first one to finally do something about that. So I think that what you're seeing is he is taking these active stances, these active actions in order to protect Americans. Something like 100,000 Americans every year are killed by illegal drug overdoses. And if we had a terrorist that came into the U.S. and blew up 100,000 Americans, you better bet that the president of the United States would be targeting any boats that any more terrorists might be trying to take to come into the United States. The same thing is happening with drugs. The president is trying to forcefully stop these illegal drugs from getting into the U.S. and just decimating our communities.
Leslie, we'll leave it there for today, but it's been good speaking to you and getting your insights into the thinking of the Trump administration amid all this.